Jill, let's take a deep dive into the world of sports as fans around North America anxiously await their team's return to action. We're going to break down where every major sport stands. Much has been talked about the NBA's unique approach to resuming its season. 22 of the NBA's 30 teams will be heading to Orlando, Florida to start the season at the end of July on the 30th. Those teams will each play 8 games to determine playoff seeding, and play will begin and end at the ESPN Wide World of Sports complex at the Walt Disney World Resort, with player whereabouts closely monitored.
Meanwhile, coronavirus cases in Florida are skyrocketing. Teams are set to arrive at the facility this week. Players that have tested positive for coronavirus are going to be delaying their arrival for a certain time period. 7 of the 22 Disney-bound teams have closed their practice facilities over the past 2 weeks because of positive COVID-19 cases. Kristen, you just have to think, even when these plans were being thought up, quite different situation in terms of where the cases were. When they first started thinking about things, it was the New York, New Jersey region that we're seeing the surge in cases. Now it's Florida. So the timing of this is not great.
Right, very different. And even the commissioner of the NBA, Adam Silver, basically saying that they are going to continue to monitor it. So this is the plan. But he has given us several hints, Jill, that the plan could change if the situation in Florida gets even worse. I mean, we're already seeing more than 10,000 cases, right, at some of its record days there in Florida, a really challenging situation. And for some of these players, they were given the option as to whether or not they wanted to play. Kevin Durant, a newbie on the Brooklyn Nets, he tore his ACL, so he's not going to be playing no matter what because of that injury. But he was recently interviewed and said even if he didn't have the injury, he probably would not feel comfortable actually playing because of that close, consistent contact right throughout the course of an entire game.
No, basketball is one of the tougher sports. I mean, social distancing is pretty much impossible. The players are kind of in each other's faces, so that would definitely prove difficult. Baseball, though, a little bit of a different story. Major League Baseball will be the first of the 4 major sports to start playing again. Spring training is actually already underway. The season starts on July 23rd. But instead of what we'd normally have, a 162-game season, the schedule's been reduced to just 60 games, with 40 of them between divisional rivals. While normal MLB stadiums around the country will be used, the schedules have been created to limit travel between cities for the players.
That's right. And instead of the typical American and National League divide, the separation is purely geographical in this case. So, for example, ESPN already teasing the East Coast and West Coast opening night on the 23rd of July. The Washington Nationals are going to host the New York Yankees, and the LA Dodgers will take on the NL West rivals, the San Francisco Giants, of course. While fans are not currently permitted to attend the games, some states and cities have indicated that this could be allowed later in the season, depending on the status of the coronavirus. So, Jill, even though the skeletons, right, the structures of these reopen, return to play plans are in place, I think obviously the different leagues are being very honest that this is at any moment certainly subject to change.
And just the idea of these empty stadiums is incredible. I don't know if you've watched any golf at all, but golf is back up and running, but there are no fans that are lining the course as you'd usually see. And it's just odd. And golf isn't even such a fan-driven sport like you see with something like baseball or basketball, where the fans, their presence is really felt. It's just such a different change.
It's a really good point. We know that the National Hockey League is also taking a similar approach to the NBA and utilizing the concept of this bubble city, but it's only hitting the ice north of the border. So as part of this agreed upon deal between the NHL and its Players Association, a plan is in place for the NHL to suspend its season and officially start playoffs on August the 1st. 24 teams will compete for the Stanley Cup, and while 8 of the league's top teams will get a bye round, the other 16 teams will be playing a qualifying round to determine which clubs can move on.
Right. The NHL is basically using 2 hub cities, Toronto for Eastern Conference games and Edmonton for the Western Conference. Just like the other sports that we're watching, again, no fans will be allowed in NHL arenas. The start of formal training camp slated for July 13th, with teams traveling to those two hub cities starting July 26th. Certainly in Canada right now, they are not seeing the explosion of cases that we are seeing here in the United States.
Right, and we should point out to viewers too, I mean, these professional sports leagues, certainly the NBA, the NFL as well, I mean, tens of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, right, that they have in their systems. And so they are able to better take care of and regularly test and house some of their athletes, which is obviously much different than returning to high school sports, younger sports, even college sports. That has been the concern, that these leagues just have so much firepower, so many resources behind them, that they can get back to this sooner rather than some of the other teams.
I'm glad you mentioned college sports. That is a big issue in this household anyway. We are big college football fans. And my husband and I were just talking even about the fall and what that's going to feel like if there isn't a football season, which is a real possibility. Plans are underway to try and make sure that there's a season. But we have to remember, these student athletes are students, right? They're not getting paid. They have to really pretty much follow the same rules as the students of whatever university that they're on.
It's a good point.
There is some controversy, though, now surrounding the NFL's return to play and their plan, which is slated for September. While preseason games have already been canceled, the NFL Network is reporting the league is considering holding 35% of players' salaries in escrow for the season. The plan is designed to offset the costs of having no fans in attendance.
And some players, Jill, are speaking out against this proposal. Michael Thomas, the New Orleans Saints all-pro receiver, said that players would sit out before they would agree to the NFL's actual reported plan here. It's interesting because we've seen a rise in day trading, which can be attributed to all sorts of different things. But the big question has been, once sports does return, will people who wanted to see entertainment investing, basically investing in the stock market almost as a way to gamble because they didn't have sports as a means to bet on and gamble on at the time, will there be some flow of money out of the stock market and more into these bets on DraftKings and other platforms once live sports does return? Based on the data, it doesn't seem like we would see a major change in the stock market, but just a reminder that without that crutch of live sports around, people definitely have turned to other forms of entertainment in the pandemic.
I guess it all depends on how the stock market is doing. That's a really good point, Kristen, that I didn't really think of. But just, when we think about sports in general and just how big a part of American life that they are, I mean, certainly everyone wants to see sports get back up and running, but they want to do it safely. And we were talking about just this disagreement between some of the players in the football league and the league itself. We saw that with baseball. I don't think that Americans right now have much sympathy for these debates over money. If the players want to talk about safety issues or the owners want to talk about safety issues, I think that that's something that Americans can get behind. But the issues that we saw with the baseball league and now, I don't know. With so many people unemployed and the millions of dollars that we're talking about, I don't know if that's going to sit so well with Americans not getting back up and running just over pay squabbles.
It's a really good point. We do know that even Major League Soccer, Jill, is trying to get their season going now. Dozens of positive COVID-19 tests leading to some of those games being postponed. And today, of the 6 games that were originally scheduled for today, 5 have actually been canceled. A little bit more distance there, certainly, than the basketball court. Probably obviously different than the line of football play as well. But still, obviously, just goes to show the concern, and we know how contagious this virus is.
And I believe tennis, my favorite sport, I believe that U.S. Open still a go for the end of August.
Let's hope. That would be very good. Let's hope.
I saw this picture of Serena Williams and our producer Brian saying move on, but I did see this amazing picture of Serena Williams with her daughter Olympia, who's I think about 2 years old, on the tennis court, and it got me really excited for the U.S. Open, I gotta say.
Such easy watching, definitely at the end of August. I hope it does come back.